Hello, everyone. Welcome to Interesting Stories. Let's begin. Carrington Estate, Grand Hall, Connecticut, 9:47 a.m. Morning light streamed through the stained glass dome, spilling over a floor of marbled stone. Dozens of polished shoes tapped nervously beneath designer silk dresses and tailored suits. At the center of the room stood Talia Monroe, 17, dark-skinned hair neatly tied back, wearing a navy blue vintage dress, the kind you'd find at a thrift store, not a will reading. She stood with her hands lightly clasped around her skirt, slightly reserved but eyes clear and unapologetically present. To the left, Fiona Carrington, mid-30s, polished like a magazine cover, leaned toward Grant, a middle-aged man in a dark suit. Fiona whispering loud enough for Talia to hear, "Did she get lost or crash the wrong birthday party?" Grant smirked. "Grant kitchen staff's kid, maybe. Not our concern." Talia didn't flinch. She took a deep breath and looked toward the walnut desk where the lawyer was seated. Talia murmuring to herself, "Mom always said standing still can make people more uncomfortable than speaking." Cut to flashback, Carrington Library. An 8-year-old black girl sits cross-legged on the floor between shelves, immersed in Othello. Leonard Carrington, an older man, enters silently. He kneels beside her eye level and gently places a mint candy in her hand. Leonard softly, "You're smarter than all of them. They just haven't noticed yet." Back to present, footsteps echo across the marble. Elias Moore, salt and pepper hair, slim build, steps forward and places a sealed envelope on the desk. Moore, firmly, "Ladies and gentlemen, per the last wishes of Mr. Leonard Carrington, I will now begin the reading of the will." A sharp scoff cuts the air. Fiona Grant glances at Talia and shakes his head, as if the outcome was already known. Talia didn't blink, didn't frown, her eyes colder than the marble beneath her feet. Carrington Grand Hall. Minutes later, lawyer Elias Moore broke the seal on the envelope. The faint snap of the wax, soft as a leather whip, was enough to still the entire room. "Moore, I will read each item exactly as handwritten by Mr. Leonard Carrington. Nothing added, nothing omitted." He adjusted his collar, slid on his glasses, and unfolded a sheet of ivory paper. Talia's eyes locked on his hands, steady, unhurried, like this moment had been rehearsed long ago. "Moore, reading to my grandson, Oliver Carrington, I leave the entire vintage car collection on the condition that none of the vehicles be sold for at least 10 years. From the back, a young man grinned and exchanged a handshake with a relative. Polite, shallow applause. "Moore, to my daughter, Fiona Carrington, I leave the St. Bart's estate with the advice that ocean breeze tends to blow away petty things." Fiona flicked her hair and smirked. Fiona, under her breath, at least he kept his sense of sarcasm. Moore, pausing briefly, "And now?" Talia felt her palms go cold. Moore, clearly slowly, to Talia Monroe, daughter of Janelle Monroe, I leave the remainder of my estate, including the Carrington residence, all active investments, and the controlling 51% share in Carrington Global. Silence, as if someone had sucked all the oxygen out of the room. Fiona shouting, "What? Grant, this is absurd. It has to be a mistake." Oliver, "He must have been senile. Who gives a whole corporation to a kid?" Talia remained still. A breeze drifted through the curtains, gently stirring the hem of her dress. Moore remained impassive. He placed a smaller envelope on the desk, Leonard's shaky handwriting on the front. To Talia, Moore looking directly at Talia, "He wanted you to read this alone." Fiona shoved her chair back and stepped forward. Fiona, through gritted teeth, "We will contest this. That will can be overturned." More calmly, Mr. Leonard anticipated that. He turned to an annex sheet. More Clause 27B. "Anyone who legally or publicly challenges this will forfeit their inheritance in full." The room fell deathly quiet. A server dropped a tray. The crash echoed sharp as glass. Fiona froze. Grant sank into his chair, jaw clenched. Talia looked down at the envelope. She said nothing, just reached out and picked it up gently. Late night, Carrington Library. Upstairs in the estate, everything was so still that even the ticking of the clock sounded like water dripping into a deep well. Soft golden light from a floor lamp spilled over polished wooden floors, where Talia stood alone. She had taken off her shoes, walking barefoot across the worn Persian rug. Each step brought her closer to the large portrait at the center of the wall. Leonard Carrington in a classic tuxedo, his gaze sharp, almost piercing. In her hand, the unopened letter still trembled. Close up. The letter, the handwriting slanted and familiar. Leonard voiceover reading his own words. Talia. That day in the library when you were reading Othello, while my other grandchildren were glued to their phones, I saw it. You don't come from this place, but you belong here. They will come. They won't accept it. And if you must burn everything I've left behind just to rebuild it your way, I give you permission because you have something they never will. The courage to stand when no one is clapping, Leonard. Talia folded the letter, her hands still slightly shaking. A soft sound behind her. Walter, the old butler, stood in the doorway. Walter gently, "You all right, dear?" Talia, looking up with a faint smile. "No, but I think he knew that." Walter, nodding. Mr. Leonard never made a move without thinking 5 steps ahead. He quietly walked away. The door closed behind him with the hush of a falling feather. Talia sat down in the leather armchair beside the fireplace, the one Leonard used to sit in while reading the paper. She pulled a random book from the shelf, worn leather cover dusty. As she opened it, a sealed envelope slipped from between the pages. On the back, in the same shaky handwriting, "If you've found this, then it's time to prepare. Carrington Global Executive Boardroom, 3 days later." The main boardroom on the 32nd floor, lined with walnut paneling and floor-to-ceiling glass, offered a sweeping view of the Manhattan skyline. The tables stretched like a runway, Italian leather chairs, thick financial reports laid out in front of the shareholders. Talia Monroe walked in no thrift store dress this time. She wore a tailored charcoal gray suit, crisp white shirt, buttoned to the collar, and her hair in a low bun. Calm, unhurried. She had nothing to prove. Across the table sat Fiona Carrington, dressed in a wine-red power dress, Grant in a black tie, fingers tapping against the table, a few others, lawyers, minor shareholders, waiting to see how the young girl would handle the room. Fiona, opening with a saccharine edge, "We're not here to fight, just to clarify whether you truly understand the seat you've taken." Talia, nodding, voice light as if talking about the weather. "I do. This used to be a room my mother wasn't allowed to enter. Now, it's different." Grant, snapping, "You're playing with fire. Carrington wasn't built on some sentimental moment in a library." Talia, lifting her gaze, steady, "I'm not playing, and I don't need anyone to teach me how to build an empire. I just want to make sure it's not built by shutting people out." A beat of silence. Fiona leaned back, arms crossed. "Fiona, you think you'll survive in a room full of sharks?" Talia, with a quiet smile, "No, I plan to change the water." A phone vibrated softly. An assistant entered, handed Fiona a thick envelope. Fiona flipped through it and paled. "Fiona, you're starting a scholarship fund." Talia, "Yes, in my mother's name, the Janelle Foundation priority will go to underprivileged girls of color." Grant, "You're killing the Carrington legacy." Talia, cool, unwavering, "No, I'm rewriting it." 1 year later, Janelle Foundation Scholarship Gala, Carrington Estate. Crystal chandeliers lit the grand hall, which no longer felt cold, like the day the will was read. In the warm space, glowing with candlelight and soft jazz, new faces mingled, black, white, brown, Asian. They laughed. They clinked glasses. No anxious foot-tapping. No judgmental stares, just school uniforms, trembling voices, giving speeches, and eyes filled with dreams. Upstairs, at the end of the mahogany hallway, Talia Monroe stood alone. She wore a simple black dress, her hair softly down, not glamorous but grounding, like a pillar in a house with a new soul. She looked down from the staircase balcony. A 14-year-old girl stood by the mic, voice shaking, speaking about her mother, once a janitor at a private school, too expensive for them. Young girl, nervously, "Thanks to the Janelle Scholarship, I'll be the first in my family to go to college. And if Ms. Talia Monroe is listening, then thank you." for remembering the ones who were never invited into this room. Talia stepped back from the railing, walking toward a once empty wall beside the main staircase. A new brass plaque had just been installed, etched in clean letters. The Janelle Monroe Scholarship Hall, founded by Talia Monroe, 2024. For those who were once told they didn't belong. Behind her old butler, Walter approached and stood silently beside her. Walter gently was Mr. Leonard Wright. Talia didn't look at him, just smiled softly. Talia, he said I was smarter than all of them, but I don't think that's what matters anymore. Walter, so what does... Talia looked around the room, then back at the plaque. Talia whispering that I didn't walk in alone. Thanks for watching. If this story moved you, imagine what's coming next. Subscribe to Interesting Stories for more true moments that surprise, inspire, and stay with you long after the video ends. Until next time, keep looking for the story behind the silence.